And we're so grateful to this technology that lets us come together from all over the world. Some of you may be here for the first time. Welcome. Some of you are seasoned. Bless you, Christine. Some of you are our alumni, beloved community. Welcome. So do me a favor. Couple things while we're still here on the gallery view. Do your favorite wave. Hi, hello, favorite wave to each other. Hello, 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 everyone. And while your fingers are up, go find your mute button, if you could, and make sure you're on it. Make sure you're on the mute thing for now until we ask questions. Cool? Great. Next, go over to the chat. We love chat. It's part of how we communicate with each other. Pop in the chat. Some of you already know. Where are you in the world? Franz, back from Baja, back in Windsor. Well done. Where are you in the world? We want to know. Look at that. All over. Beautiful. Welcome, everybody. Germany's here. All over the United States is here. Santa Fe's here.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Unceded Diné territory, Lila, of course. So let's, I'm going to start doing a spotlight thing now, which means our faces are going to be big, but you can always switch it back to the gallery view if you want to see the group. And I'm so delighted to have Christine Sperber, co-founder of MEA, and Lee Johnson, who is, what is your new title, Lee? I can't remember.
It's still undecided. I kind of land, livestock, and awareness collaborator, but I haven't gotten that officially.
Just generally an amazing human would work for me. So welcome. Christine and Lee are on our Santa Fe Ranch campus right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'd give you two a moment to say hello before we bring Lila up on stage.
Lee at one point did submit a proposed job title to me that was Land Mindfulness Director. Give that a second.
That could work.
Funny. It's not
Landmine.
funny. Landmines are not funny.
Landmine. Oh,
yeah.
see, I'm not fast enough for this. It's too hard for me.
Yeah, sorry.
It's too hard for me.
Here we are. But I appreciated it at the end of a long day. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So many beloved faces out there in the crowd. Thanks for coming. We are going to get through these introductions quickly because they certainly didn't come here for us today, did they, Lee? I mean, you're pretty special, but why do you think everybody's here today?
Because of Lila.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here thinking like it's just been too long since I've been in Lila's presence and had a chance to connect with her. But we did get to go out to her place and spend the night in her hogan. And this is a total treat to be able to spend time with you, Lila.
Yeah.
I'm really honored to be here. Thanks for having me and inviting me into your community, which I know is very special to you all. So thanks for letting me in.
I'm going to introduce you officially to our community, Lila, and then Christine and Lee and I will just enjoy some conversation with you, and everyone know that you'll have a chance to ask questions a little bit later in the call, either by popping them into the chat or you can raise your hand down at the reactions button. So we'll do that in a little bit. So we're so delighted and honored to have you here, Lyle June Johnson. She is a musician, a public speaker, an internationally recognized performance poet of the Diné or Navajo, and I cannot pronounce your Cheyenne lineage. Can you help me?
Tsétsêhéstâhese.
Tsétsêhéstâhese.
Try it. Yes.
Got it.
I like people to try, you know? We got to learn.
Yes, I got it. Tsétsêhéstâhese. Her personal mission is to grow closer to Creator by learning how to love deeper and to support empower Indigenous youth. She is a student of global cycles of violence that eventually gave rise to the Native American Holocaust and the destruction of many cyclic relationships between human beings and nature. This exploration birthed her passion for revitalizing spiritual relationships with Mother Earth and cultivating spaces for forgiveness and reconciliation to occur between cultural groups. She's a co-founder of the Taos Peace and Reconciliation Council, which works to heal intergenerational trauma and ethnic division in northern New Mexico. She's a walker within the...
Well, this is actually a very old bio but let
Oh, is
me,
it? Okay, so help me. You just keep
which
going.
is true. I just gave you the new one, but it's the Nihigal Ina movement. We walked from all four sacred mountains, but the one I just gave you is kind of the more, that one's like 10 years old, which is still relevant,
wow.
but a bit old. This
Wow.
one's
Okay,
the
this
newer
is so we're going to get this updated here for everybody. But let's just go forward. She graduated with honors in 2012 from Stanford University with a degree in environmental anthropology. And she wrote award-winning papers called Nature and the Supernatural, the role of culture and spirituality in sustaining primate populations in Mountain National Park. Many things. She's amazing. Can we just get here? She's amazing. Our team got to experience Lila as a keynote speaker at Wisdom 2.0. We're just so, I am so impressed with your spirit, with your intelligence, with your heart, with your commitment, with your passion. And we're so honored to have your teaching at our campus and opening up on our early months of our ranch being open. So I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm going to turn it over to Christine and Lee, who did get to spend some time at your beautiful, beautiful place and to share some questions.
Hello, Dr. Lyle June. How are you today?
Ah,
See your
you
face.
can just call me Lila. Hello, hello.
Like, it actually makes me feel cooler that I have friends that are doctors because I'm just not. Gosh, Lee,
Yeah.
do you want to describe a little bit what it was like? So, Lila, you have created a space in Gallup, New Mexico for your community as a place to gather, to come to heal, to have workshops. Is that a fair description of your hopes and dreams for that land?
Oh, it's already done it,
Yeah.
luckily, but we're just building it more and more. But yes, it's like a Indigenous Knowledge Center and Retreat Center. Yeah.
And we all had the great honor to come share a meal or two with you there and sleep in your hogan, which I know was really a peak experience for all of us. And I'd love to hear Lee maybe reflect a little bit on that before we jump into some questions with you.
Yeah. Well, it was a total treat to come and spend time there. I arrived in the dark, and so I couldn't see the landscape really. But the interesting piece about that is that it gave me an opportunity to just feel into, without the visuals, feel into that land there that you have. And so it was very inviting. There's something about nature and land that I'll let you obviously say much more about that, but being there and tuning in, you could feel there was the healing presence there. There's a calmness, and there's something about land that hasn't been interfered with, for lack of a better term, very much, that keeps its there's a presence there. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And then you were so inviting. You didn't know us from a can of worms, and yet you invited us in like we were a part of your people and a part of your
Community.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my initial experience of you. And then I just felt such a great connection with you myself. So I would just open it up with that.
And maybe we should set the stage a little bit more. So for those of you who aren't familiar with New Mexico, Lila, you are from Taos originally, right? Which is northern New Mexico. There's a ski resort there. There's the longest continually occupied.
Inhabited. Yeah.
Inhabited. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit. And now you are in Gallup, which is on the other border. You've kind of gone across New Mexico to the west, and that's where your center is. And we are so there's kind of like a triangle between Taos down to Santa Fe where we are and out to Gallup where you are. Just feels interesting to situate us here in this state and where we're all sitting. Are you in Gallup right now? I know you travel.
I am. We're actually shooting a music video on the land, which is why I'm all like fancy pants right now. It's not my normal Zoom interview wear, but Yeah, so I'm here. I'm here on the land. We were just in the Hogan, which is our traditional ceremonial structure, which represents the mother's womb. It's made of all wood and plaster. There's no nails. It all uses gravity to have like a woven roof. And yeah, so we were just in there, and I'm here. I'm here in Diné, the people's land. And you are my people. You know, Diné, the word Diné, which is the name for our tribe, our nation, really just means human being. So in the really old traditional way of thinking, everyone is Diné. We're all Diné. We have different clans, different subgroups within the larger umbrella term of human being. But yeah, like my grandma's told me that all people are your people.
Um, that feels incredibly gracious considering the shared history that we all have. And I want to recognize that that is incredibly gracious. I wonder if you would share.
But it's also not, because you know, like the trauma that Europeans inflicted on Native Americans was first inflicted on them during 2,000 years of open warfare. And all of the rhetoric, all of the playbook that European colonists used on Native Americans was practiced for over 1,000 years on the native tribes of Europe. So there's just compassion and understanding. My elders said, have compassion for Europeans because they had just gotten out of 2,000 years of open warfare. And they call it the Dark Ages for a reason. Like, it was hard. They didn't know if they would have food the next day, which is why they developed a hoarding, profit maximization culture. So have compassion. So it's gracious, and it's also not gracious when you look at the deeper view of history and I'm also half European. So what we as Europeans went through, the pretty hardcore stuff, that our trauma, we then repeated that cycle, you know? So there's only love and forgiveness. There's only compassion and understanding.
So at the root of your project, Lyle June, is it really about breaking cycles?
I'd say at the root of the project is being all that we are.
Oof. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that? Because that feels like the beginning of something very, very interesting.
We're already it. We already have it all. We just have to buff off all of the illusions of what we're not, that we have bought into. So that includes, for Indigenous peoples, for my people, they call us drunks, they call us fat, they call us poor, they call us lazy. That's not what we are. That's what colonial society has told us that we are. They call us casino Indians. No, we are Indigenous peoples. We are Diné. And we had to take all those labels that colonial society has put on us and peel them off and say, we are Nahokadian Diné Balashla. We are holy earth surface beings, the five-fingered ones. That's our true identity. So that's for my people. We have to be all that we are, you know, not all what the world has told us we are, which is not true. You can't beat people down, kill 98% of them, which is what they did, and then be like, oh, you're drunk Indian. It's like, yeah, my whole family died. A drink sounds kind of nice right now. Like, that alcoholism is a result of the trauma. So that's not our fault. We don't have to take that on as our identity anymore. And the casinos are also not our choice. That's put on us by the loan sharks and the Las Vegas people who are like, oh, cool, we could put this on native reservations because they're sovereign. But anyways, when it comes to being all that we are, it includes my sheep. I want them to be all that they are. The land, let it be all that it is, all that it can be. When we enslave the land, trap the land, extract the land, we're not being what we truly are, which is a child of the earth, not a master of the earth. So also being all that we are is coming here to learn how to be a child of the earth, how to love her like a mother, Because when we act like her dominator and her enslaver and her capitalizer, that's not what we are. We were made to be her child.
Mm.
Lila, I remember you speaking about keystone species and the possibility of human beings being a keystone species. And I was really moved by that. I really loved that metaphor, if you will, or adopting that as a reality. Can you incorporate some of that into what your vision is and what you're up to?
Yes, that's really related to the question of being all that we are, because most of the world, and if you've seen my TED Talk, this is probably like old news to you, so I apologize, but hopefully most of you haven't. So most of the world sees us as like a pest or a problem, or humans are like this stain on the earth. And if there's only no humans, the earth would flourish. But my research has shown that, and not just mine, a lot of people have researched this, that humans have touched the earth around the world in ways that have bloomed and blossomed whole gardens all around the planet. And we have been an asset to the land. We have been not only things that don't hurt the land, but things that add value and create biodiversity, create soil health, create um, bountiful food systems, not just for humans, but for all life, such that if we were to disappear, the earth would actually miss us. And that one definition of a keystone species is a species upon which whole systems depend. Like in architecture, there's a stone at the top that is the keystone, that if you take it out, the whole thing falls. So that's sort of where the term came from. But an example is a beaver, right? A beaver builds a dam, they build mini dams. And that creates all these pools. It flows down the water, which prevents erosion. It creates fish pools. All the moose will start coming. Everyone will start coming and hanging out, drinking water. That gives a chance for the wolves to come in and maybe snatch like something, a snack, what's drinking water, the circle of life. So those beavers are this critical piece. And when they wipe them out, the beavers are really similar to native people. We both got almost completely wiped out. So when you wipe out the beavers and you wipe out the native people who've worked for thousands of years to refine a science of the land, you have a huge problem. You're taking out multiple keystones, multiple things are collapsing, such that the America we know today looks hardly anything like what it used to look in the 1300s, for example. And just really briefly, I want to say most of the narrative around Native people is that we are short-sighted and prone to collapse, right? Jared Diamond's book, Collapse. I really don't like that book. Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. That's, I could go on and on. I won't. I will spare you my opinions. But point is, a lot of the narrative is like, oh, Indians just would always collapse, you know? But that's actually the exception, not the rule. Because we're seeing 6,000-year-old clam gardens in the Pacific Northwest. We're seeing 3,000-year-old oyster farms in Chesapeake Bay. We're seeing 3,000-year-old chestnut groves that grew from Maine to Georgia that were human created. We're seeing really ancient soil systems throughout the Amazon known as terra preta, or Amazonian dark earths, that were anthropogenic man-made soils that are like across the entire Amazon River basin. So actually indigenous peoples were incredibly influential on the land and created these really ancient, long-standing, successful, sustainable systems. Were there times that we messed up? Absolutely. There's times when we did collapse, but we metabolized collapse. We learned from it. It became our gift and our teacher, which actually taught us how to be sustainable. So a lot of people misinterpret those collapses as like, oh, Native people messed up, when in fact, that's what taught us most deeply how to be keystone species.
I want to come back to this word metabolize, Lyle June, because it's so interesting. We had an event with Chip here last night in Santa Fe where he read from the book, from his new book. And he talked about, that wisdom is not guaranteed for us, right? Experience may be guaranteed, but wisdom isn't. It's that metabolizing of that experience that gives us the opportunity to move towards wisdom. So this idea of metabolizing is very fresh for me. Could you talk to us a little bit about elders in your community and the way that elders are held and viewed in Indigenous community?
Right. So contrary to Western society, the older you get, the better it is. It's like, woo, I'm becoming a grandma. I'm becoming an elder. And you were grateful. You're like, dang, I got to live this long, How cool. I'm only 34, so I can't speak to it from an experiential standpoint. But I do know that our elders, well, in Native cultures, you might have heard this. There's two things we have a big priority on in our communities, and that's elders and the children. Those two things are like highest priority. So we really have to care for the elders. In fact, in Taos Pueblo, the one you said is the oldest inhabited community, or rather building. It's like 1,000-year-old building that's people lived in for a long time, made of adobe. So they, in their culture, because I grew up there with them, you cannot pass by an elder without saying, "Can I assist you?" Like, it's extremely disrespectful. If you just imagine if our society was like that, right? Like, we're in the street, we're in New York City, we see an elder carrying their thing, and you're like, "Hey, do you need assistance?" And like the community that would engender. But that's sort of how we treat elders. Now, from an elder perspective, looking down, that is also very much, we just honor people's knowledge. Like my grandmother just passed. She was 100 years old. A lot of my family was kind of colonized, and they were like, it's just grandma, But my teachers were like, no, like, she's not just grandma. Like, what she says, like, take it seriously. She's been around the block. So yeah, and similar to, like, not always are you guaranteed to have wisdom. Some people have said you're not always guaranteed to know how to act like an elder. I mean, maybe some of our politicians are an example. They're very old, but do they act with integrity and sacrifice and care for their people, like truly deep down, and so I think just because you're older doesn't always mean you're an elder. Sometimes, you still respect them, right? But like, to gain that elder knowledge takes a lot of discipline, a lot of time spent learning the songs, learning the language, learning the meaning of the constellations, learning the land, and probably our most important word in our language is eh, K apostrophe E, eh. So means kinship. It also means kinship roles. It means interdependence. It means community. It means love. But how to be a father, how to be a mother, how to be a grandmother, how to be a grandfather, how to be a niece, how to be a nephew, how to be a daughter, how to be a grandson. All of these things had very specific roles, and our job was to fulfill that role to our deepest ability. So the elder would also support others in learning those roles. Like, you would treat the children appropriately, like, don't do those inappropriate things, right? That's the breaking of when we don't know how to do our kinship roles. When the uncle is like being creepy to the young women or something, that's not him being a proper uncle. He has to relearn, and the elders can teach him, this is how you behave around young women. And so that's sort of like the roles that the elders were also tasked with teaching everyone. So there's a lot I could say, but hopefully that gives you a good start.
Oh, there's so many questions that I have from that. Was amazing. One of the things that we focus on here at MEA is the fact that we have basically like stripped ritual out of our lives and the importance of ritual to mark occasion, right? And then you also spoke to essentially the social contract, which also feels, at least to me in America right now, so incredibly broken. And the idea of how we relate to each other in kinship really is about the social contract and how we relate to each other. But what came up for me first is this idea of that outward show of respect to elders. And what did you say? How may I assist you?
Yeah, something like that. You got to say to them.
Is there, so also, in the kind of like current dominant society, it feels like in the US, where we're constantly worshiping youth, there's always almost a fear of elder not landing as an honorific, right? That moment you're on the subway and you're like, should I give this person my seat, or are they going to be offended? Do you have a way that you mark kind of a movement into an eldership that is clear, that is societally recognized?
Yeah, I mean, it's a delicate thing, right? I know my mother, who some of you may know, Pat McCabe, she's like, when she first was starting to become an elder, she like they call her auntie and like grandma, and she's like, whoa, 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 that's too fast. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that grandma title. But so for me, I usually err on the side of like not elderizing people unless they're like straight up elders, like they're way up in their years. But ideally we would get to a point where we're not offended, right? We're like, oh cool, that's I'm being seen, but yeah, I think menopause is a thing, and that doesn't mean that you're not the flowing gorgeous feminine. It just means it's a rite of passage in and of itself. And we don't, just like we don't honor women who get their period anymore the way most cultures around the world have for millennia, we're also not honoring that process of menopause, which my mom, when she had menopause, we had a ceremony for her, and we had like 20 women come, and they all told their experience of menopause, and some of them were really hardcore, like deep in the depression. Like some of them were really easy, like they just woke up one morning and was like, oh, okay, and I'm fine. But like we needed that space to share our stories. And then for the men, I don't know what the marker is, but there must be one, and that's maybe not for me to know. But there's this moment where like you become the grandfather, you become the person who is now responsible for the teachings, right? Teaching the young men how to honor women. That's a huge one in Native culture. Women are so central, and like respecting them, knowing how to respect them. Because a lot of times we're not taught, right? Like we're not trying to cross any boundaries. We just weren't taught how to honor women's space, how to not touch them without consent, how to not assume they want to be touched, even if it's just on the shoulder or something. Like that is not taught in our culture. In fact, the opposite is taught, right? So the grandfather becomes the one, at least from my perspective, what I've seen, they sit down the young guys, right? And they're like, let me teach you a few things, let me help you out. Maybe that's the marker for men, is when they are stepping into that role of being the mentor. I don't know. I'm not as an expert on that side, but I think the menopause is the big one. Maybe the gray hair is the big one. I don't know. I mean, to me, I already got my first gray hair, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, how do we fall in love with that? And my new mantra is, I love my aging self. Like, because like aging, it can be hot, it can be super hot and gorgeous. And like leaning into that, being like, yeah, this is me in my like ripening form, and like really like honoring that gray hairs and just the beauty of aging. And I think the more we lean into that and saying, I love my aging self, the more beautiful we become, right? Because self-love and self-acceptance is in and of itself beautiful and radiant. And so, so yeah, but I hope that answers your question a bit.
That was,
I'm a bit rambly today, as usual.
but there's just so many good points.
Mhm.
I do want to, oh gosh, somebody said this the other day and I thought it was such a funny turn of phrase. I want to double tap on this menopause piece for just 1 second, because it's fascinating to me. And I've been on a bit of a one-woman mission to normalize talking about menopause. I think that Carrie did put it in the chat. We do have a menopause boot camp workshop because of just the process of becoming a menopausal woman was such a shock to me. The lack of information, of communication. I had this like vague notion that someday I would stop menstruating and, hello, I didn't know everything else that was going to come with it. But what I've learned in this one woman mission, because then people feed back to me, is that often in cultures that have ritualized that passage, if there's an unveiling, for example, that they experience way fewer, sometimes zero symptoms of menopause. So when it is, when it is ritualized and celebrated, it actually changes the way that we experience it. Or so I have been told.
Sounds right, because you have your community supporting you.
Right. All right. So nobody has an easy answer on when we give up the seat in the subway, but we're all going to err on the side of being good to each other whenever we can.
Yeah, I like that.
Let's switch over to regenerative land practice a little bit, because that's your, you study that in school. It's what you're doing out on your land. It's what we're trying to do here as well, is to, well, I'm going to let Lee talk about this here and what we've been trying to do here at the former Saddleback, current Rising Circle Ranch, which is, in order to regenerate soil requires an animal impact. And I tasked Lee with the very difficult, some said impossible task of trying to do this with horses. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes, please talk about it. I want to learn.
But I want to tie it in a particular way.
Oh, let's go, Lee. Let's go.
And what that is, when you were just sharing, Lila, one of the things that comes through that I hear so clearly in when you were speaking is that there is a reverence for life in the social construct and in the way you were talking about culturally people relating to each other and things. And so it's not possible for me to separate all those things out, or I don't want to. It's an important aspect of this regeneration piece, and it fits right into with this idea of being a keystone species. This idea of a reverence for life. A beaver doesn't set out to create habitat for other animals. I don't think. I don't really know, but I don't think. A beaver is being its true nature. It's following those impulses. It's being its true nature. And in doing so, it creates habitat and is a keystone species, if you will. So, not to sound too Santa Fe woo-woo here, but when I look at land regeneration, there is an aspect of coming from a reverence for life, for all life, and watching, there's banner tail kangaroo rat dens out where we have the horses. And, I don't feed hay where they are because I don't want the horses trampling their homes. And on and on and on. Like, it's taken a lifetime, and I'm a novice at it, developing that kind of perception, that level of awareness, where when you're looking at how do I interject myself into the regeneration of this land, how do I do it in a way with that level of reverence for each and every aspect of life here that's indicated? And it's one of the things that's been most, the amount of time that I've got to spend in various indigenous cultures. I got to spend some time in the Kalahari with the Sands Bushmen. And that reverence for life, that understanding of the mutuality that you were pointing to. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, or if
I don't
I'm
even
just,
remember the question at this point. I'm kind of caught up in the.
or if even
the
I'm on a
moment.
thing, but I want to frame it that how we treat each other and how we go about regenerating land, they're related.
Yeah.
They're related.
Yeah, and what you said sparked a number of things, so I just want to maybe share them. When you were saying, do the beavers know all that they're doing? I think I'll out woo woo you on a cellular DNA level. I think they do. And it reminds me of what this elder told me. He said, not only are we here as human beings to fulfill our responsibility to creation and to land, we're also here to assist the other animals to fulfill their responsibility and their duty. And that was like, whoa. And specifically, he was referring to the butterfly migration. He's Amamutsan, his name's Val Lopez from Santa Cruz. And the butterflies will come through his area. And I think they go all the way south. I don't know where, but very far away. And he said the milkweed is a very important pit stop for the butterflies. And so he said, we got to make sure the milkweed is healthy so that they can do their job for the butterflies, for the lots of different species feed off the milkweed. He's like, so my job is not only to assist the land and fulfill my role as human being, which is to be steward and caretaker, but to support all the other beings to do their role, such as the beaver, or on and on. I mean, everyone, when everything's in harmony and balance, they're all fulfilling their little unique role, down to that little kangaroo rat, right? And the horses have a huge role, the herbivores, so that's one thing what you're saying. And I think highlighting reverence absolutely answers the question, because we get so caught up in the how-tos and what are we gonna do and what's the strategy, what's the mechanical coolest cover crop we could plant, what's the most efficient way to compost, what's the greatest trees per acre, tree diameter. I mean, we can get really technical, right? But I think that is actually secondary. What is primary is our intention. And if our intention is to have reverence, what is primary is our values. What is important? Because you could take the same technology of the clam garden, right? And hand it to an extractive capitalist, and they would kill it, right? It would die within a matter of decades because it's not regenerative. It's about getting the most from me the fastest. So it's the same exact technology, but when that technology is in the hands of someone who is rooted in reverence, right? The reverence, the reciprocity, the respect, the restraint, the relationality, the regeneration, all these R words, the humility, the warrior spirit, then that clam garden all of a sudden is like, that's where you want to be. It's popping, right? It's like a party. There's minks, there's otters, there's water birds coming in, eating the clams. There's enough for everyone. And so to me, what I've been really thinking is that Similarly, like technology is good or bad depending on who's using it and why. The human body, the human being is neither good or bad. The human body is just the hardware, but it's the software that matters, the program that operates this hardware, the worldview, the value system, the perception of what's important and what's not important. That can either turn the Homo sapien into a blessing for the earth or a curse for the earth. And so really by you zeroing in on that reverence, that's the software that we need. And I think that if you have the proper software, everything else will fall into place. The mechanical strategies of this, of that, da, 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 da. When you have the software, that's really what you need. And it makes me happy that despite all the colonization, all of the destruction of our languages, all of the destruction, the conquistadors would burn whole libraries of Aztec codices, right? Like just destroyed so much. But what they never took was our heart and our love and our hospitality and our reverence. And like, that's actually the thing. That's all we really need. When that is leading us, when that's the rudder that's like steering our boat, everything else will fall into place. So I think you're absolutely right by zeroing in on reverence, that is gonna guide your regeneration journey. And it might take some fine tuning over time, but as long as you have that, that's all you need. That's the secret sauce that makes it all flow.
I don't even want to like step into this space after that. That was like beyond. I don't know if you can see the chat, Lyle June, but everyone wants all the words that you just said. I know that we are recording.
Yeah.
Go ahead, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, if you like, I actually have a slide that could be part of the recording. If you allow me to share my screen, because I actually like to talk about this. And there's one specific software that's really interesting to me that I think is really, it's already set up and it's from a specific nation, the Anishinaabe Nation. And I think it's just cool to share it with the world. So let me just do this real quick. So this is the words I was saying. These are the software. You could obviously add to that, take away, add humility. I think humility is like the only non-R word. But then this one is actually an actual thing. The Anishinaabe 7 grandfather teachings. So these are the 7 grandfather teachings, like we were saying, the elder man would teach the young men that these, if you just get this stuff right, you're good, like that's all you gotta know, just get this right and you'll be good. And so I love this software that guides Anishinaabe culture. And it's really cool because they even have an animal that corresponds with each one. And yes, Sasquatch is real. So this is their software that they hand down. This is an ancient teaching. They're like, if you get, and there's a Anishinaabe word for each one, right? It's been translated into English, but the Anishinaabe words have a lot more fine-grained detail and knowledge. But if this was like your database that like the software, the program that your whole society is running on, imagine what the world looks like for them. Imagine if our banking system operated on this. Imagine if our school system operated on this. Imagine if our food system operated on this. Like when we get so caught up in the physical world, like I said, what kind of cover crop, what kind of dirt, and we neglect the invisible landscape inside of us, we kind of might win some battles, but we're going to lose the war. So I think that I'm like, even though the PhD is done, I feel like I'm still learning what the heck is going on, what it is that I'm trying to learn. But I think one thing that's been revealing itself lately is that there's our outer landscapes and there's our inner landscapes, and they're both so important. And the inner one might be more important, in our regenerative journey, which is why MEA is so important, because it's helping people heal that invisible world of the human heart. And when we heal that and we get our priorities straight, right, and what we're trying to do, then boom, we can be such good keystone species. We can go out there, we can be good to each other. So in any case, I think that and that's a very long-winded way of saying I think you're right on with the reverence as your answer, because like that's it. And the other thing you reminded me of was the health suck. Actually, I can share this again. The health suck, let me get to them real quick. Oh yeah, here we go. So these guys are herring roe farmers. So what they do is they dip hemlock boughs in the coastal waters, and they also dip kelp. This is a fast-growing kelp. They basically grow kelp forests with their bare hands. And this creates more surface area for the herring fish to lay their eggs, which is this little thing here. And this is a caviar, basically. And it's extremely nutritious and delicious. And when it's connected to the hemlock, it has like a pine taste, and they call it herring on hemlock. And this is an example of a keystone species, right? Like if those humans were taken away, which they almost were, right? Like over 90% of them were wiped out, the health suck people, then what happens to the kelp forests? And the crazy thing about the herring eggs is they actually feed the whole food web. They feed the whales, the wolves. They have these things called sea wolves. They'll go out in the ocean, like eat stuff. They have bears that will eat these eggs up the food chain to the eagles, the salmon, etc. And so, in a way, the humans, their strategy was like, I want to augment the base of this food web so that everything flourishes. It's kind of like the milkweed. If we just help the milkweed out, everything will cascade, that trophic cascade will be helped. So but that's rooted, even though that's the physical strategy and the clever thing, the outward landscape, the inner thing was that reciprocity, right? Like, I want to feed. Yes, I'm going to eat these herring eggs, but I'm going to feed everyone else around me in gratitude for the fact that this system is feeding me. So they're like feeding everyone every time they build these kelp forests. And lastly, I'll just say quickly that not only are they feeding everyone, but they say the most important part of the harvest is not what you take, it's what you leave behind. And that means you got to leave enough eggs to hatch so that the herring come back next year. And herring is so important to them, this little silver fish, that their whole new year starts in February, March when the herring come. And so when they're restraint, right? That restraint, don't take it all, leave enough for it to regenerate for next year. So that's sort of some of the things that you were making me think of, Lee.
I want to just interject one other piece, and that is that inner landscape work that you were talking about. Our lives and the world moves at such a pace, like there's just a pace to it all. And one of the things I love about being here on the ranch is that a lot of the speed that our culture moves at, it isn't present. And so you find yourself moving at the pace of the horses, or like the pace of your sheep and the land. And there's a you know, in the tracking communities that I've been around, they talk about living it, earth speed or earth time, what they call it. And there's anyway, I'm just so what brought all that up was I was like, oh, I can't wait to hang out with Lila out here and, you know, like spend some time at earth speed. And because that regeneration of our inner landscape, if you will, can't be done at that pace out there effectively. I don't. And so there's just a real opportunity. There's work that you can do out there that maybe you can't do at this pace. I don't know. But the opportunity to be here and have that chance to slow down to earth speed and have the time and not the distractions to be able to go into your inner landscape and do that with other people is a beautiful opportunity. And I just wanted to say that, and I can't wait for you to get here.
I could
Yeah.
do this for hours, and yet we have 8 minutes left, and you are filming a music video, so we want to be very respectful of your time. We're so grateful that you were able to join us today. Carrie, do we want to open this to some questions?
Absolutely. We have just a few minutes left. So if you have a question you want to come up and ask Lila, Christine, Lee, raise your hand in the reactions button and we'll bring up just a couple of you. And I'm going to get off stage and bring up Susie right now.
Hi, thank you. I actually had a couple questions, but my first question is, have you identified who the First Nation was on the land there in Santa Fe?
We have met with a few different Pueblo historians and educators to identify ruins and petroglyphs here. It was a few years ago, so we need to revisit that. There's a number of different peoples that were here on the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my second question was, yes, thank you. To Lee, on when you do make decisions on, you know, what to do in a certain situation regarding the land or for practices, do you have a practice that you incorporate to connect with the land on a sensory level, an immersion level, if you will, before you make a decision from a cerebral place?
It's not a very formalized practice, but I do at times get very quiet and very still and see if I can tune in. And sometimes, like if I'm putting a trail in, sometimes in my mind, I'll say, oh, the trail should go here or the trail should go there. And I don't always do it, but there's times when I do ask the land where it would want the trail.
Okay.
Or, you know, when I'm getting ready to move the horses, I look at the impact that they've had and you know, I can quantify that in certain ways. A lot of it's done by feel and sensing, but then you know, the ultimate decision of is it time to move the horses or not, oftentimes is an internal amalgamation of you know, what are the horses needing, what's best for the land and the plants and things on the land, that type of a thing.
I just want to come back on because Lila, you did such a beautiful job answering this question. A lot of people wanted to know about the ancestral history of Santa Fe. So thank you, Susie. I'm just going to give it over to you, Lila, for a moment.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I wrote it in the chat, but just the famous church, Assisi Church in Santa Fe, is built on top of an ancient Pueblo kiva. So Santa Fe itself is a very cute, romantic place on the outside, but on the inside, it's an extremely violent, brutal, nasty, squatting on Indigenous lands. There's even an obelisk monument to honor the American soldiers who massacred Native people. So Santa Fe is absolutely an expression of colonization. And so it's exciting to create this connection with MEA to start to heal that, right? Because we don't just have to regenerate the soil, we have to regenerate history and heal history together. And that's why I'm coming to the land this year to start that process, because it's called Indigenous Wisdom and Global Action, meaning how do we take action? How do we be in solidarity to move the needle in healing these past traumas and not being part of the solution instead of accidentally kind of blindly being back part of the same old, you know?
I think that is probably the perfect place to end this is Indigenous wisdom and global action, right? Lyle June, I cannot thank you enough for engaging with us and for spending a week on the ranch and hosting us and making time for us today. Lee, you want to say anything? Lee's over here just an emotional, he's in deep reverence and moving at earth speed.
I would say this.
Yeah.
That's about all I have to say. But it's been a pleasure to be with everybody.
Really so honored.
Let's put it back in the gallery view. Some of you have been watching. If you're new, like, what is everyone doing? Why are they rubbing their hands together? It's a very MEA thing that we consider this like pearls of wisdom that come to us that you polish with your hands. So it's a very MEA way to recognize something that you feel internally that just feels moving to you. And Lila, it's been happening for the entire hour. We've been watching people just spontaneously just recognizing and feeling these wonderful gifts that you've given us. So everybody go ahead and put it back into the gallery view. You too, Lila. So you can see, go, let's just do that together for you and honor you and recognition for all the wisdom you've given us today. Oh, it was beautiful. Thank you, Lee and Christine. Just such a gorgeous, this is just a taste of what a whole week would be like. Can you like imagine? I can't. So if you're interested, of course, book a call. We put that down there. We will be sending you the recording of this conversation you can share with your friends. And it also appears in two other places. It's on our YouTube channel and also on our website under Free Wisdom. So you can find that there as well as how to register for other live events that we will continue offering. And so Lila's Week, July 16th through 21st at the ranch. Yes, Christine, take us home.
I just want to say we have a huge amount of financial aid available through MEA and through AGE. If you know someone who would like to spend the week with us, with Lila, and there is a barrier to that, please know that we will work to get people here. So don't be afraid to share this around, because we want to make this as accessible as we can. Not just Lila's Week, it's always a goal, but I always just want to mention that as
And
well.
10% of the proceeds of all tuition are going to a local Tsétsêhéstâhese nonprofit, the local Indigenous nation. And we had to design it that way, right? To like start bringing MEA into the fold of really being a true partner of local Native nations. So it's an exciting first step.
Thank you, Lila, so much. Thank you, Christine and Lee. Everyone, thank you for coming. So delighted to have you here and to be a part of this community. It means the world to us that we can be here together, and then we can gather all around the world. Australia is here as well in the middle of the night. So with that, we will give you, as Chip loves to say, 1 minute back. Chip's gives 1 minute back. So go use that minute wisely and enjoy, everyone, and have a beautiful rest of your day, night, evening, morning. Thank you, Lila. Thank you, Christine and Lee. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.